Very happy to be here in Argentina. I have lots of love for that country. It's good to be back here in Latin America. I spent 14 years living in Brazil, in Rio. I'm originally from France. My accent is still here and firm and strong. Yeah, 2 years ago I ended up moving to Zanzibar with Christophe, who is here, my friend, partner, brother, in Zanzibar. And it's very special to be back here in music? Okay, good. It's good to be back here in Latin America. It's good to be back to Aleph. Very happy to see that all those pop-up cities are happening around the world. So it's very exciting. So I'm here to talk about a conscious operating system for our world, and how we ended up through a DePIN movement and working on the cloud and on the plumbing of the internet, how we ended up building all the different tools for people to build this conscious operating system for our world. Okay, it's not working. Now it's working. Okay. So technology is really like magic, and when we see what we can do today with what we have around, it's absolutely amazing. I remember my relationship really with the internet started with Napster. It was extremely mind-blowing. Like for me, it was just the moment I realized the power of this place, like how we could create something absolutely amazing. I remember seeing like people going onto my computer, downloading files, and I felt that we could like just build something totally different. Everything was extremely genuine. It was just like everything felt that everything was possible. Not sure about the copyright part. I think we didn't figure out that back then, but it was just a beautiful time of the internet where you could feel like, okay, there is really something happening. And it really got me extremely hooked, and I felt that really we could build up something absolutely amazing. Fast forward, after a long career at Apple, I ended up being very frustrated about how we could actually use those tools for something really good for the world. And I started to build an education platform named Sikana. It means in Sanskrit, teach and learn. Every time I say Sikana, people are like, no, like Sikna. So, sorry, Sikna. We created that platform where we built with a network of NGOs, experts, and teachers all around the world. You can still find on sikana.tv. We created a platform where the idea was very simple, to provide life skill education to as many people as possible by sharing skills and life skills education based on agriculture, how to take care of a kid, etc., etc. The project grew extremely quickly, and we ended up with more than 1 billion videos and courses delivered around the world. The sad part of the story is that we ended up with extremely high hosting costs, and it put us into a situation of almost bankruptcy. And at that moment, it was a very tough time in my life, where I was like, I don't understand, like I felt that we were doing something extremely valuable for the world, and we ended up with this situation. So I started to look at all the possibilities to figure out how we could have those hosting costs being spread in between the network, spread in between the people who were a part of this. But also it was a moment where I realized that the internet, the way it was, being concentrated onto big companies, was extremely not scalable for a project who really wanted to impact the people. So today I'm going to talk a bit about DePIN. DePIN stands for Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Network. And the DePIN is actually, I think, something that can be the base layer and all the mycelium network that we need when we start to recreate that new internet as a base for a new operating system. DePIN basically is something that is now becoming a trend, but that's something that we've been doing like now for a couple of years. We've been building a vision on how everyone can become a cloud provider. And what does it mean? It means that within the DePIN, you always think about an incentivized infrastructure deployment where anyone can take part of it. And as the deployment happens and more places are using the network, the value of the network is growing and so on. It's really something that can allow anyone to be part of it, and that can actually scale something that can allow anyone to deploy different forms of workload that are truly decentralized and can be accessible. But let's go back a bit to about what's the internet today, because internet is a bit like electricity. Everybody is using it, nobody knows where it comes from. It's like, you're like, okay, cool, like, we just know when it's not working. Like, you with your microwave, you press, and you're like, oh, it's not working today. And it's, in Zanzibar, it happens almost every day. So that's the moment that you realize that, okay, it's cool, we're building the internet, but energy comes first. And but yeah, what's the internet? So today, the internet, the way we use it, is mainly hosted on gigantic data centers. The usual suspects: Google, Amazon Web Service, Apple, Azure, Microsoft. So basically, anytime we have an interaction between each other, our life is being concentrated, our digital life is being concentrated in such a gigantic building. Some of them cost up to $1 billion or $1.5 billion. And everything is extremely centralized. And on top of that, the way all of them are interconnected are through submarine cables that go around the world that connect those different data centers where our digital life is being hosted. And we feel that it's something that's going to work forever, but actually it's extremely fragile. And still, because of the way it's built in centralization, it's still serving only half of the planet. So we still have half of the planet living without a decent internet, a decent form of internet. And the other part of this equation that is actually a real challenge is that those gigantic data centers are mainly concentrated into rich countries. So what happens in terms of power is that those rich countries are hosting the information, the data of most of the 1,000 countries in the world. And it's for me a new form of actually of colonization. It's you have like the two of us are exchanging a message and it's going into a data center as in Miami. But we live in Argentina or in Brazil. Like, why is our digital life not with us? And if you think of it, if you rethink about IT as energy, we should never have like, you want to have it as close as where you live. You want to be resilient. You want to make sure that whatever you have, you will be able still to use it and to interconnect to the people around you. If I was telling to you that, okay, from now on in Argentina, we're going to produce the energy in Canada, you will tell me, like, what? Like, it doesn't seem to be a very good idea. But unfortunately, it's what ended up happening. So this is something we need to think about. Africa doesn't have its own internet. I know it seems a bit strong as a statement, but it's exactly what's happening today, and it's the same for Latin America. And for almost all countries, the internet is GDP negative. And what does it mean? It means that every time you use the internet, you're allowing actually value to be extracted from your country. You allow people to take the data, like all the information, the freedom, like everything is being actually fueled into other places. If you think of it, it's like when two people today are in a place like Zanzibar, doing a Zoom or just exchanging a message, there is a complete circumnavigation where the information goes into a data center, maybe in France, maybe in Germany, where the interaction is being hosted, so someone is being paid in this country for that interaction to happen. And most of the time, the information is not even owned by that specific data center. It's owned by a company in California, like Meta, who owns all of your data, all of our data. So that's what we're trying to fix here. And there must be a better way. If I'm 30 kilometers from you or just across the street, there is no reason why our information is to go to Miami and come back. And also the other part of this equation, and we'll extend more in details about that concept in a moment, but today we exist hundreds of times. Like I send you a message on WhatsApp, you answer me on LinkedIn, I'm sending you a message on Instagram, and you answer me. Like, it's just a mess. Like I have a couple of people here in this room that I have multiple identities and conversation on all these different programs, and it's kind of crazy. If you think of it, we ended up building an internet and a form of digital life that is company-centric, and we keep jumping from one app to the other. It's not efficient, and it's actually extremely dangerous also for other reasons. So if you think of what we just talked about, what would be the infrastructure for that conscious operating system that we want to build for our world? The first thing is identity, the thing I've been trying to do for the last 3 days. So we need to own our digital life and our digital self. We need to exist, and we need to be directly connected to it, like as above, so below. We exist, and we have a direct ownership of our identity. The second part is owning our data. It's not enough to own just our like coins. We need to own the actual storage of whatever we build and whatever we do for this planet. And we need to be conscious also, based on that, on the digital footprint that we have. Like, I'm sure like no one in this room has a true understanding of the quantity of terabyte or gigabyte that is actually being used at the moment by himself. Just because we don't know. We've been paying for that information. We've been paying for using those services with our data because we wanted to use those services. But because of that, we're just unaware of how much data we're being using every day. Like, I don't know how many, at the moment, I just don't know how much data are consumed by myself. How much storage am I using? And even if you think of it a bit more deeply, like, how much should we keep on those servers? Like, how much for my entire life should I keep? Should I have a key with 1 terabyte that is like my digital life, and I decide that, okay, for my life, 1 terabyte will be fine. Like maybe the same way you could decide that you would have a library and you would end up with 1,000 books, and 1,000 books very well chosen, it's maybe the right number. I don't know, but that's really what we want to explore here. Because it's also linked back to resource consumption. If we have an unconscious internet and an unconscious way of consuming data and connecting between each other, we also don't know how much we're using of the rare earths of this world to be able to store on those different pieces of metal or information. And that information that most of the time actually is probably the same. Like how many times you've been in a concert or into an experience where you have everyone filming the exact same thing at the same time, recording and storing onto those drives the exact same thing. And it's kind of a nonsense because if you think of it, like while we're looking at the world and the global warming and everything that is happening, and we are frying our planet to keep the same videos. Well, I love cats, for instance, but should we store hundreds of hours of cat videos jumping around every day of our lives? I'm not sure about that. It's a real question. So the underlying infrastructure, if you think about the internet, and we'll get more in details after, but it's about compute and storage, network connectivity, how we connect those different things, and the application layer on top of it. Our project, Threefold and Our World, we'll get more into the details, was really at the origin of the internet. Christophe was here, first time here in Argentina. I could convince him to come and discover the beauty of this country and have a nice parisha. And so it was really at the origin of the first ISP. Some of the people of our team are like deep tech engineers that were part of the first web hosting world records, first data deduplication system, one of the first cloud system. So really like working on the plumbing, not the fancy cool stuff that you see on top, like really like the plumbing. We call ourselves the plumbers of the internet. That's what we do, like we do the plumbing. And what we've been working really on is into a cloud that works as an engine that is autonomous. That anyone in this room can become, in a couple of steps, a cloud provider. Like you don't have to be Google, you don't have to be Microsoft, you can just arrive, you connect to it, you can really think of it as IT as energy, while you have an architecture with different pieces of it, you have like the nodes, and the nodes can be big, can be smaller. The idea is that it's as simple as like you plug it on one side on the internet, and you plug it to electricity. Once you do that, it works automatically, and it participates in the network, and anyone can run a virtual machine or any forms of IT capacity on it, IT needs on it, with a software that we created that runs on bare metal. So there is no area of attack. It's extremely secure. So for all cyber security and stuff like that, it's extremely good. And it can be a little box, a bigger box, a much, much bigger box, or even it can be an entire container. So right now with Zanzibar, we're working with like some solutions of like liquid cooling system. We put all the material inside and they can run directly on something like that. You can run 200,000 people can host their digital life. So you can bring sovereignty in a very easy way without having to build an entire university to train people to run a data center. That is something extremely complicated. So that's the base layer, and we call it the tier S data center. And that's actually with the base layer that can become the layer 0 for the entire DePIN ecosystem and the blockchain world. Because today, most of what's happening on top at the protocol level is not being decentralized at the infrastructure level. And infrastructure is everything. Like you need to work on the infrastructure. Otherwise, someone comes and press the button and this is done. Like you just cannot keep running it. So that's very important. We have been doing a proof of concept at pretty large scale. So we're in lots of countries in the world with people who are part of the open source movement. They come in, they download the software, they plug them within that network, and they can start running that cloud. That's fun. I just saw that someone arrived in Ecuador. It was last week. And we have no one in Argentina. So actually, I think it was a good reason to come here. So if anyone in the room wants to run the first node, you can use perfect. Okay, we have two. You have two, I like it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But it was an open source movement, so we didn't do any big launch or marketing, or we didn't list on Coinbase or Binance or whatever. We just said like, okay, we want to run it, we need a coin, we found a proper technology to be able to start playing with it. And what's beautiful is actually like people started to do it from all over the world, connecting hardware to it. The return has not been so good, but I mean in the sense of like to date, we haven't been pushing that as a token or as a Web3 play, so it's been like, but it's been actually beautiful because people keep running it because they believe actually in what we're building. They understand that it's a long-term play. And right now we have actually telcos, we have governments coming on board because they understand also the importance of sovereignty and the importance of security when it comes to AI. Like you don't want to run your AI onto another country. You don't want your citizen information to be feeding these new forms of AI. It's extremely dangerous actually. So you want to actually own your sovereign cloud in this space. And without knowing it, we were kind of creating the network and the base layer, the compute layer, the compute stack for the network state. When I remember I was with Christophe on the trip, and the person who introduced me to that book is here. It's Niklas, my great friend from Roatan. And I remember like looking at that book. I was like, he's like, you haven't read that book? And I started looking, I was like, wow. Like, it was amazing because I understood that, yeah, okay, we can create this kind of network of people, this network society, network state, where people can collectively connect between one another. So you can be cloud first and LAN last, but not LAN never. So without knowing it, we actually did what was the infrastructure for the network state, creating the compute stack that can actually allow an entire community to own its network. Because if you create a community that is all over the planet with very important and very sensitive information, that is creating something absolutely beautiful in terms of science, medicine, and different things, but that doesn't own its own internet, you can't create a network society because you won't have the sovereignty that you need as a network state. And today, what was absolutely amazing is that 2 years ago, through a friend, we ended up meeting with different people in Africa, and one of them was the president of Tanzania. And they understood actually that that matter was extremely important, and sovereignty was a key element to how they were dealing with their IT capacity. So we started to work with them, and what happened after was absolutely amazing because they realized, along with us, that by recreating a new sovereign form of internet and a peer-to-peer network for the country, that would allow a full-blown new economy and a new form of interaction between the people. And they ended up actually understanding that by doing so, they will bring lots of value and lots of capacity directly inside the country. This was a couple of months ago with the Minister of ICT of Tanzania. We did the same event after in Zanzibar. And then that was amazing because like actually all the people and all the youth from the country, they were cheering for that to happen. They were understanding that by building their own form of sovereign network, they will start being able to create new stuff, new experiences and new capabilities for their economy. And so it was really beautiful. It's very exciting where we are. And now really it's a matter of like consolidating that with the government. We believe that actually the government can be extremely important if they want to empower their people, and that we have the capacity to build that in a very different way. So I want to call here Christophe to come on stage with me. And after we'll take some questions at the end.